last year, Nikki. That was the first time I tried out this recipe. I found this great bottle of red wine. After supper, we took it down to the beach and we finished it in the rain. God, how we laughed. And then we... Quite a summer, huh? Sometimes time just flies. And then there are the times when it drags on and on. Quite a summer. It's hard to believe it's only been a year. Feels like so much longer. Or what do you reckon?
Well, I got news for you all. We have a special guest here to this. I don't want to say this morning because it is like very early in the morning, but all the way from Germany, we have Alexander-Sieder, I guess
Cedar. Excellent. You said it right. Yeah, nobody ever does.
And she's an
Yeah.
accomplished American actress based in Germany and known for embodying fierce, fallible mothers with a deep streak of empathy and boss bitches on the verge of a tumble.
I think I need to change my IMDb. I have a new brand statement. It's I play high status women, morally ambiguous with a fierce heart. It's easier to
Yes.
say. There you go.
She also plays women who go down but not without a fight.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, she's had a diverse and impressive career in both film and television. And here are some of the notable movies and TV shows she has appeared in. Recently is A Heidelberg Holiday, and she plays Melanie. And then Guns Akimbo, which was a few years ago, and that was directed by Jason Leigh Howden. You were also in a movie called Forget About Nick, also,
Yep.
alongside Katja Riemann,
Yep.
and OJAI as Catherine, and The Coming as Dr. Bonner. Ooh, you played doctor this time.
Yeah. High status. There you go.
And you also in the movie Eight Remains, Morning, Noon, and Night,
Yep.
Bitter Taste, Sky Sharks, a stewardess Mary, and one of you got eaten by that one. And one called Lagos to Oslo, which was just like 2020 as Nina
Yeah.
J. Now, the TV shows you were in is Tatort as M. Fang Shemfen. What?
So Tatort, that's just like this iconic German series. And it's like a police series, one of those procedurals. And I played a hotel manager who was hiding information from the police people.
Well, that's pretty awesome, and especially in this Christmas time at Heidelberg Holiday, which is kind of interesting. It's and you also played in Echoes as Mrs. Gordon.
Yep.
And
The mean businesswoman.
Tage. I think it's called.
8 Tage.
Tage, for day. Yeah, 8 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
8 days. Yeah.
Yeah. And an interesting Teresa Banks and Sally Ride. Wow. Very eclectic. That's awesome,
Yep.
man. That's awesome.
Thanks. Thank you.
So you also played leads in several award-winning indie films, such as The Coming, which we mentioned before, and Morning, Noon, and Night. And also, want to talk about Heidelberg Christmas, talk about that. So we're excited to learn more about your journey, experiences, and insights. So, Anne, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you. I'm so happy that you're here too, and we're finally at the day where you get to grace my podcast. Woohoo, the great Anne Alexander-Sieder. Awesome. So, can you tell us about your journey into acting? What inspired you to pursue this career?
Yeah, so I think my first taste of acting was really like the first taste that a lot of kids have. Mine was at summer camp, but a lot of kids have their first experience at school. And our camp was putting on Oliver Twist. I was 9 or 10 years old, maybe 11 tops, I don't know, somewhere in there. And they were kind of like, saying, everybody come and audition, everybody go to this room and sing, everybody go to this room and dance. And, long story short, I had no idea, nor did I have any skin in the game. I don't remember caring one way or the other what I got cast as, or even if I got cast. And I ended up with Nancy, which is the only main female in Oliver Twist. And so even then I was not impressed, right? I would have rather been swimming or riding horses. But I did it. I did the rehearsals and all that. And it wasn't until we were performing and I'm out there alone on the stage singing As Long as He Needs Me. And I'm sure I have no idea what any of that meant. And I can still see the bright lights shining on me and the people sitting in the audience in silhouette. And all of a sudden, I felt like this connection to the audience, like I was kind of holding them. And it was like a very empowering feeling, as you can imagine, for a little girl to like notice that all of this attention was on me. And I was somehow able to connect with all of them at the same time. And it was really fun. And I came home and started directing all the neighborhood kids, to Food, Glorious Food, to doing all the songs from Oliver Twist and all the dances and all that. So I think my parents probably thought I would become a director if I did anything. But when I was about 17 years old, I had found out that my grandma had been under contract. I have to ask my mother which studio it was, but my grandmother had been under contract to one of the studios out in LA.
Wow.
And so she was very supportive of me becoming an actor. So she was like, well, I was living in Detroit at the time. She said, you have to come to Chicago because Detroit, there's nothing going on there for you. And so come to Chicago. There's a great theater scene and lots of good stuff. Get started here. So that's what I did. And fairly, I went to like a conservatory style acting school. And they used to bring in coaches from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. Mm-hmm. And then I finished up my acting in London. I did a semester abroad over there at the Royal Academy. And then I did the typical backpack around Europe. And then I came back to Chicago. I started doing theater. But I had always I was very intrigued with Europe. So I had a few side, detours along the way. But I ended up back in Europe. And for a couple of years, I was living in Rome. And I was working as an actor, as a model, as a whatever, it was, you don't need much money when you're in your early 20s, it was, and my grandma was sending me $100 a month back then, which went a long way. And, life was fun and interesting and free. And then I came back to Chicago after about 2 years of that and got back into the theater scene, started getting into auditioning for film, television, commercials, voiceover, those kind of things. I ended up getting, I was working enough to be SAG and have my health insurance paid for by SAG. Mm-hmm. So I was like, yes, I'm doing really well. And I had also in between had gone to New York. I was there for a while studying directing at NYU.
Wow.
I was kind of all over the place, to be honest. I lived in Rome. I lived in Paris briefly. I lived in the south of France for a while. So anyway, but back and forth, always coming back to Chicago as my home base. And that's when I met my husband. And it was a whirlwind romance. And I ended up in Germany, pregnant and getting married very quickly. And that kind of changed everything because I didn't speak German. So that was kind of a wrench in the machine because, obviously you have to be able to communicate as an actor. And also I was a new mom, new wife, new country, all of that. So it took a couple of years to get acclimated. And after I started to get acclimated to Germany, I saw a poster somewhere about the American Drama Group. And so I made an appointment, went in, auditioned, and the guy was really nice. He's like, "Fantastic, welcome to the American Drama Group." And I was thrilled. And then he pulls out a calendar and starts showing me the touring dates. And I was like, "Oh, whoa. I can't tour. I have a baby. I have a husband. I'm a new wife. I'm sorry." And I felt terrible. I was mortified for not having checked into this myself, but that's how it was. So I stood up and I apologizing profusely and, for wasting his time. And I'm just about to leave. And on a whim, I kind of leaned back in the room and I said, "Hey, you don't happen to know anybody in Munich that I could call, do you?" And he thought about it for a second. He said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." And he gave me 2 names. And those 2 names became pivotal in launching my voiceover career, which was prolific. I mean, at certain points, I had sometimes 4 and 5 jobs in a day. So it was really good. And that showed me, I think for the first time in a big way, that first of all, people are willing to help if you can if you make it easy for them, right? It was like no skin off his neck, nose or whatever, right? To give me those names. But I never would have gotten them if I hadn't asked. And so I launched my voiceover journey, which led to presenting work, which is like doing the intros, outros for TV shows, corporate television, convention, I also hosted a couple of quiz shows that were broadcast in Canada, as a matter of fact. So I was always doing acting adjacent stuff, but I wasn't acting when I was living in Germany. And I was always looking for a way to fill that void without realizing that's what I was looking for. And one day when my son was about 16, wait a sec, he comes to me. We had a standing movie date on Friday nights. And he comes to me on Thursday and said, "Mom, I hope you don't mind, but not only do I not want to hang out with you tomorrow night, but I don't ever want to hang out with you on the weekends again. I want to hang out with my friends." And yeah, bittersweet. But and my husband was on a golfing trip, I think, on that weekend. But I remember it being like the first time where it was like, well, what do I want to do? And on a whim, again, I sat down and I Googled acting workshop Munich English, and one popped up. There was a coach out of LA who was teaching a workshop that weekend. The following morning was starting, and there was one spot open.
Wow.
And I whipped out my credit card, I reserved my spot, and I showed up to that workshop. And it was amazing. It was everything I'd hoped it would be. Because honestly, if it hadn't been that great, things might not have worked out the way they did, right? I would have thought, and then you kind of move on, right? That spark wouldn't have been reignited. But because the workshop was so good and that spark just like combusted into flames for me, and I left that workshop feeling like I have been trying to breathe underwater for 16 years. And this is my element. This is where I belong. And I came home and I told my husband, I'm going to relaunch my acting career. I was 47. And he didn't really know what that meant. My husband doesn't come from that world at all. And he's like, okay. And for me, I realized I was rusty, right? And being an actor, it's a craft, just like being a musician or an athlete. You have to practice, you have to stay in shape.
Yep.
So the first thing I needed to do was get my training. And I had 2 choices with that. So I could either fly to LA, New York, London, and find coaches there and take those workshops. And obviously that would be really expensive with the, the travel and the workshops and, you know, all the stuff that goes with it, time consuming. And I was still responsible for, like, you know, getting my son up and into school and making him dinner, even if he didn't want to hang out with me on the weekends. And so then my obstacle was that there was no training in Munich. But I find often that your biggest obstacle is the key to finding the solution. And that's why I realized that the solution would be if the training were here in Munich. And so how do I make that happen? And I just started reaching out to amazing coaches that I wanted to work with. And I knew that if I could get a handful of other actors to take the workshops with me, that I would be able to pay for the workshops as if they were already in Munich.
Wow.
That was my only intention. What very quickly ended up happening was I was getting the training for free. I was earning, you know, anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000 per workshop. And I was building this amazing community of actors because I was starting from complete scratch. I had no industry connections, no idea who the good agents were, the casting directors, no current showreel material. So having those connections was also a huge part in facilitating the relaunch of my career. So that also made me realize that there are sort of 5 pillars, right, to a thriving acting career. And it's mindset. You got to just, like, ask yourself the how and not the, oh, it seems impossible. Don't deal with thoughts like that. Just keep asking yourself how, and the answer is going to come to you. So mindset, branding, marketing, networking, and community. And they all need to work together holistically. So I did that for about 1.5 years. My only intention, again, was just to get the training, right? And then I relaunched my career. And originally I was just doing everything, you know, that I had done when I was a young woman. But the world doesn't open up to, now at this point I'm almost 50. So the world doesn't open up to a 50-year-old woman the same way it does to a mid-20s, right? When I was a lifetime ago. And so I was doing all the things that I had been taught to do, that we are all taught to do, which is, you know, get your show reel together, get your headshots, get an agent, get on the casting director's roster, and wait. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. I mean, this waiting thing is not really my bag. And so the one thing that I felt that was immediately getting in my way was myself and my own limiting beliefs around my age. So I became a life and career coach to kind of bust through those limiting beliefs and find a way through them, which I did. And then that was kind of a revelation because it made me realize that I could just adopt somebody else's framework and strategies and shorten my timeline, that it would take me to learn these things on my own. And that was like, bing, you know, okay, what else don't I know? And I was like, oh, I don't know a lot. Let me find out about all this stuff, right? Because I felt very confident in my skill as an actor, but I had no confidence and no clue about the business of being an actor. And that's what I really set about learning. And at this point, you know, I was coaching with business coaches who can be very expensive. I was, you know, writing and producing my own short films, you know, all those kind of things. So at this point, then I would put on workshops once in a while when I needed some extra cash, like to fund a short film or to pay for one of these expensive coaches. And then, so my objective had changed, but it was still a really useful thing. And the other thing that was happening at this point is I am becoming kind of like an authority, which in the beginning I really had to fight against when I was still in the training phase, to say like, no, guys, I want the feedback, because if people view you as an authority, they won't give you feedback. They are afraid to critique you. And I didn't want that, right? But in the second phase, it was irrelevant. It didn't really matter. So I was inadvertently building authority and generating this income and continuing to expand my, my knowledge through these great coaches and my network and all of that. And then most recently, I've used the workshops as a way to network with people I want to work with. So like casting directors, other filmmakers, right? Because as I'm sure you know, actors are pretty low on the totem pole if you're not an A-list actor or if you're not on set. When you're on set, people will be running behind you, holding an umbrella over your head. As soon as you walk off that set, it's like, see ya, kid, don't let the mud splash you in the face, So I needed a way to get on equal footing with the people I wanted to work with so that they could see me as a full-fledged human being and not a needy actor.
Wow.
And that's what these most recent workshops have done. So, and also what I was learning sort of maybe 5-6 years ago, when I was learning about the business of being an actor, was all about branding, which had never occurred to me, to be very honest. Yeah. So, you read off my very first branding statement and reminded me, thank you very much, that I need to change my IMDb. And that has definitely evolved. It's much more simple at this point. I play high status, morally ambiguous women with a fierce heart.
Bitchy woman.
Also, I can play a bitchy woman, but that was my old branding, right? Because that was based on typecasting. And if I don't know if this is on YouTube, right? So your viewers are seeing me, so I have sharp features, I am a strong woman, and that can easily be misconstrued to a woman without a heart. But that's not me, right? I do have a heart, a very strong maternal streak. I'm playful. I have a sense of humor. And these were things that I was not getting cast on those initially. And when I set about changing my branding, I went from getting one-dimensional roles, small, kind of like, fit a very specific purpose to interact with a main character, make the life of a main character difficult, to getting much more complex roles that had a journey and a story in their own right. And because they were seeing more of me, right? So I think of if you think of typecasting, it's like the icing on the cake. But unless you cut into that cake, you don't know what's inside of it, right? And frankly, even if you're just looking at the icing on the cake, you don't know if that's plastic, if it's that polymer clay stuff, if it's a super hyper realistic painting, a photo. You don't know until you actually get up close and personal with it. And even when you do that, it could be laced with poison. That when you cut into the cake, it could be stuffed with styrofoam. It could be delicious. It could be exactly what you think it is. It could be a cake that is blood red, a red velvet and has razor blades. You don't know. So people make their decisions based on these superficial things, which is normal. We all do it. But as an actor, if you want to play more interesting roles, then you have to show them what's interesting and unique about you.
Yeah, that is very interesting story. I love that. So, did you have a good relationship with your parents? Did they want you to become an actress?
Yes. Well, I had a very complicated relationship with my parents. Sometimes I had a great relationship with my dad. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I had a great relationship with my mom. Sometimes I didn't. I always knew my parents loved me and wanted the best for me. So that's something, right? Did they want me to be an actor? My dad was very supportive. My mom too. Both of my parents were supportive of me being an actor. Yeah, I think that there was really no kind of, yeah, they were supportive. They never, you know, it wasn't really part of our vocabulary as like growing up. It wasn't like ever like, you'll be an actor, of course. But once I decided and started to pursue it, then they were on board and they were supportive.
So, what kind of opposition did you get from family moving to Germany?
Well, as I said, I'd been back and forth to Europe all over the place. I had lived in New York, LA, London, Paris, the south of France, Rome. So me moving to Germany was just kind of par for the course. You know, they were used to it, you know.
Yeah, how did the SAG and after strike affect you? Did it affect you at all in some way?
The most recent one, yeah. Yeah, definitely. The writer's strike did, actually. So I am now FICOR in Europe because Europe is not SAG. So in order for me to work here, you know, if I'm union here, it makes it very difficult. So I'm FICOR. But the writer's strike has affected the entire world, and so did Corona. Although Corona, I had amazing couple of years during Corona. I mean, I worked so much during Corona, so it was great. But I feel like the industry still hasn't really bounced back yet from the strikes. I just had a talk with my agent yesterday, and she was saying it's looking up for 2025. So fingers crossed.
I'm just wondering why Fran Drescher stood up to be the president of SAG and after. It makes like why she wanted to undertake that position. That was like, whoa. Like I don't know if any
You
actors or
have to
actors would
ask
want to.
Fran. I don't know,
Yeah,
what made her do that. I have no
yeah,
idea. But I'm glad she did, and I think she does a good job.
yeah. So when you're talking about the workshops, what did they teach you in the workshops? Like the acting workshops, like when you got together and people, what did they teach you there?
Well, it depends. I mean, different coaches teach different things. But basically, I mean, in a nutshell, what you're always trying to do is understand how to express the human condition under the given circumstances. So, you know, there are many different ways to go about creating a character. For me, acting is telling the truth. It's not about telling a lie. It's acting as if under those given circumstances. So I think of all of us human beings like faceted diamonds. And each one of those facets represents a life you could have lived, a road you could have taken, a choice you could have made. And every character I play is similar to one of those facets. So some of the facets are up near the top, like if you think of an engagement ring, and are much more accessible and much more visible. But there are other facets, as you get down to the point of the diamond, that are much smaller and you don't think of when you see that diamond glinting, but they're contributing to the shine. So when I'm trying to relate to a character, it's really just finding that facet of myself that I can identify with that human being, the way they are reacting, and kind of shining it up and holding it up to the light and hoping it catches fire, if that
Yeah, I've
makes
seen.
sense.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. I've seen a lot of acting workshops where they teach you how to cry. They do romantic scenes. They put a lot of emotion into it, and especially when they say, "Okay, I want you to cry on cue. Here's the scene. Do this." I mean, there's a lot you got to learn as an actor. You just because when you get that script, I mean,
Yeah.
auditioning and oof.
Yeah. Well, it's a craft, right? It's a
Mhm.
skill. And this is something that a lot of people think it's all down to talent, and talent is part of it. But just like a dancer, a singer, an athlete, there's a lot of skill involved. And so, and the more you practice, the more skilled and talented you become.
That's
And
definitely
kind of funny, it's funny the way that works, right?
yeah.
And So it's not so much like, okay, here, cry on cue. I've never honestly worked with a director who's ever said that to me, right? It's more you learn how to prepare to enter the scene at that emotional level so that when you start to interact with the other character, you have already, well, for me, for instance, I have already, there are many different methods, right? I like method acting as part of it, but I don't always use that. But method is when you are going back to, for instance, associative memory, so, or memory recall, there are different names, but it's all kind of basically the same thing. So I would try and imagine myself in a situation that was similar to this person's situation and get myself feeling like I felt back then. And it's really just kind of replacing whoever you're dealing with in the scene. So if you and I are playing, I don't know, husband and wife, right? And so, and we're having a horrible fight, and maybe you come to me and tell me you don't love me anymore or whatever it is. My memory that I might use for that might be something entirely different. It might be the memory of when my mom and I had a horrible fight. But the feelings that I had, the heartbreak that I had, that would be relevant to this scene. And I would just sort of replace, you with that. Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
If I were to play your husband, but I have to be the abusive husband and you have to be abused wife, how do we choreograph that so it looks real on film?
Yeah. Well, now they do have intimacy coordinators or intimacy directors, right, on set, especially for these kind of things. For any time someone is kind of invading your space, be it violent or sexual, and even if that violence is not physical violence, they will often have an intimacy coordinator on set because that emotional violence invades your space. And I mean, honestly, I'm not that sensitive. I don't know. I mean, some actors get very like, ooh, and they like, have trouble like getting out of that and getting rid of it and feeling very violated and all of that. I don't have those problems. I feel for people who do, but it's not one of my sensitivities. But they're great for that, especially for creating an intimacy. Like if you don't have a relationship with someone, but you're supposed to be like, we're supposed to be playing a married couple who maybe we're deeply in love and we just met that morning. How do we create that intimacy in such a short time, right? So an intimacy coordinator can be amazing for that, or vice versa. Say we've been married for a while and you become abusive, or I've become abusive, whatever it is, right? All of there's so many subtle reactions and cues and unspoken things between people who know each other well.
Wow. It's amazing.
Right? Yeah. I mean, people are fascinating.
It is fascinating, especially like I wouldn't want to be known as the abusive husband or boyfriend on screen
Right.
because people are saying, "Oh, look, there's Chris. Oh, stay away from him." It's a whole bunch of method acting, like not taking that character home with you when I have to go home to my real wife, and she's like, "Oh, saw that movie." Like, I mean, like I don't know, So I don't know. It's kind of like you take it home with you, and how do you prevent yourself from taking that character home with you? You know.
Well, some people are more into method than others, like Daniel Day-Lewis, Jay Leto. These are actors that are known for that and known for being like terrible on set to work with. I shouldn't say that, but they're known for it. Who's the other one? The one who did American Psycho. He's another one that I can't
Christian
think of his
Bale.
name. Yes, also known for it. And I use many different methods, kind of depending on, I guess, the facet that I'm trying to get to. So sometimes I find a role through the physicality, so from the outside in. So finding a movement or a position, or, you know, there's a Rudolf Laban. It was a dance choreographer, and he created a vocabulary of movement that is also very useful to actors. So the difference between a flick and a punch, right? Or a slash. These are different movements, and some people glide into a room, and some people stomp into a room, and some people slink into a room, right? And so understanding, like, how does this particular person move is often very useful, right? So sometimes a role, I will approach it from the outside in, and sometimes I'm approaching that role more from the inside out. So my first questions are, where are the points where I can identify with this person? Like I was saying with the faceted diamond, right? Where are the points where I can relate, I can be authentic and tell the truth of that person through the truth of life that I have experienced.
Yeah. Do you remember your first acting role? Like, how did it shape your career?
Yeah, my first acting role was Nancy in Oliver Twist. Yeah,
Oh,
so yeah, that was my very first one.
the flower girl.
Um,
Yeah.
no, she was the married or in love with the pickpocket Fagin
Yes.
from
Yes. Okay, that's
right,
right.
right, right. And in the way it shaped my career, I would say, is it made me, I was lucky enough to feel that audience connection in my very first performance. And that connection is what I keep trying to, it's like you're always chasing it, that drug, right? And when you talk to actors, you hear it again and again. What they want is that moment when everything kind of fades into the background and you are just living that moment with, maybe with that other person, maybe there is no other person, but you are just living that moment. And I think acting really happens. I may get in trouble from other actors by saying this, but for me, at any rate, it really happens. In order to be acting, you need an audience. And whether that audience is the film crew, your scene partner, the people in your workshop, the people in the theater, it doesn't matter. But there needs to be that energy, that bubble needs to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a role that's been particularly most challenging for you? One that's kind of was hard to get into, one that you didn't really want to do, but it's too late, sort of?
Yeah, well, most recently it was interesting. I did for an amazing workshop. This was not even like a paid role, but it was with the director Kim Ferrant. She's a fantastic director, and she's also an amazing acting coach. She's directed people like Nicole Kidman, Naomi Rapace, and big names. And she had assigned me and this woman a scene out of Rabbit Hole. Are you familiar with that play or film?
I'm not too sure. Can you
Okay.
reiterate?
So yeah, sure. It was originally a play, and then they turned it into a movie. Nicole
Okay.
Kidman starred in this movie, and it was about this husband and wife. Everything is fine, and then one day, their little boy chases the dog who is running after a ball into the street, and the little boy gets hit by a car and dies. And the scene that we had been assigned was originally the wife and the husband. But because this was me playing with a much younger woman, the scene had now become me playing the mother and her playing the daughter whose child was killed. And I was playing what would have been the wife in the film. So there were all these dynamics to the scene that there's a way that a husband and wife speak to each other. Are you married, right? You mentioned that?
I used to be.
You used to be. Okay. Well, when you're in a relationship with someone, there is a kind of equality, especially when you're living with them. And there's this, and I don't know if you have kids or not, but mothers and children relate to each other differently than a husband and wife relates to each other. And I'm not even talking about sex. It has nothing to do with it. I'm just talking about the kind of base place that you start with in the relationship. And even though, like, my son is my business partner, he's a grown man, he's 27 years old.
Wow.
He's also one of my best friends, but he's always my son, always. And so, and maybe this is just how I mother, but it was really hard for me to understand the dynamics of this particular relationship. And I tell you, I fed it into ChatGPT because I find ChatGPT can be immensely helpful in helping you to analyze a character. So if you put a script into ChatGPT and say, analyze X character, it'll do that. And it'll give you a pretty good, a summation of who that person is and why they do the things they do. So, and I explained to ChatGPT why I was having these problems, and I explained I was just really having a hard time into this character. And it really helped me, I have to say, it really did help me to kind of understand it from this point of view. I mean, I'm aware that some women relate to their kids differently than I relate to my kid. That wasn't the problem. It was just that facet on my diamond must be pretty down close to the point because I just wasn't finding it. So I needed some help to find it, but that did help me.
Now, how do you deal with your mental health? What are some things you can do to prevent yourself from, becoming that character, what do you do in your life so that you're fresh and let's do this?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I don't go so deep into method that I lose myself. I may lose myself for a scene or for an hour or two, but I always know that I am playing this character. I never confuse reality, right? So, because for me, again, acting is acting as if under the given circumstances. So, I don't think that I am, Jane Smith or whatever her name is, right? I know I am me, but so that's not really a problem for me, but there are scenes and, times where I've been on set or done a play or in a workshop, whatever it is, where it's heavy and you just kind of like got to get it off of you, just literally like shake it off. And I definitely do that, especially when when the character I'm playing has said or done something really cruel or ugly that I just don't want any part of, I just got to get it off of me. And I'm the one who's like, can we, I'm like, are you okay? Like, can we hug? I need that connection almost back for me, just so that, to make that separation.
Yeah. How do you prepare for a role, especially when it involves complex characters? Like, for instance, in the Heidelberg Holiday, how did you prepare for the role of Melanie?
Yeah. Well, I mean, frankly, it was a Hallmark film. It wasn't that complex. She's a mom who loves her daughter, who's concerned that her daughter isn't happy, but in the end, everything works out. So that wasn't that complex. Let me think. OJAI was a pretty deep, complex character. I was playing Catherine. Was dying of cancer, and my son is kind of coming of age. And my son and I have this extremely close relationship, but I am fighting kind of to cling to life as I'm also recognizing that my son needs to separate from me in order to
Wow.
live a healthy life. And so that was complex. And how did I prepare? I mean, you know, that was a really interesting film because the director of the film, it was based on his true life story with his mom, and I was playing his mother. So I added another layer of responsibility for me, for sure. And of course, I'm not his mom. And whatever quality that he felt I had that was similar to his mom in the auditions and all of that, I'm still not his mom. And so there were all sorts of complexities in that and about that. But it was also good because I could speak to him and say, well, how would your mom react? And how would she have handled this? And why do you think she would have handled it that way? And what do you think she was feeling? And he also had been very close with his mom before she died, so he often knew the answers. So
Wow.
it really, just like every person is different, every role is different because it's a new person. So you're dealing with a new human being and a new set of given circumstances to their life and their particular journey that they're on when you meet them.
How much of Anne is, or how much of Anne is Melanie? Like, how much of yourself is in that character?
Yeah. Well, probably a lot. I mean, I I am I love my son and I want my son to be happy. And I think most moms do, right? So I could totally relate to Melanie wanting to support her daughter and the empathy that she feels for her daughter, that her daughter is unhappy and wanting something more and feeling like that the world isn't seeing all of her potential and how much that hurts as a mom, that all, yeah, I could totally relate to her.
So
Yeah.
how do you balance your career between film and television projects?
How do I balance it? What do you mean?
Yeah, how do you balance, like, you're doing all this, how do you balance it so you're not doing more than one than the other? Like, how?
Well, it may seem like actors do a lot, like when you look at their IMDb, but this year has been slow. I'll just be very honest. Um, yeah, when I've had things come up at the same time, which I have, then you kind of just have to weigh all of the the pros and the cons to both projects. And I always talk with my agent. I really like my agents, and they're great. They're on my team. Like, I feel really
Mhm.
that they're there for me. Like, I know a lot of actors don't feel that, but that's not. I really love my agents, and That's all you can really do. You know, in the end, you can only be in one place at one time, right? And I try not to live with regrets. So, like, you know, luckily, like I didn't turn something down that became a mega hit. You know, that would have been a major drag, but that hasn't happened to me. So, and knock wood, hopefully it won't happen to me. So, yeah.
So you worked with both American and German entertainment industries. How did they compare?
They're pretty similar, I have to say. People are people, and creative people are creative people. And, you know, like when you're working in LA, New York, like, you know, in those big hubs, they're so cosmopolitan anyway. Like the people on the sets, they come from all over the place. And often the same thing in, you know, because I work around Europe as well, and it'll often be the same thing. And again, you have to remember, I'm not working mostly, I work on international projects. I do work on some German projects, and then I'm usually the only non-German, although I am German now. But you know, technically, I
Yeah.
was born and raised in America. And so because I'm working on these international projects, people are international, you know, so it's people dress the same. The crew is always dressed in black. The guys always
Yeah.
have these tunnels in their ears. You
Yeah.
know, they always smoke. There are a lot of similarities, you know. So
Yeah. What do you find most rewarding about being an actress?
the stories I get to tell, the people I get to meet, the play, the fun. It's the only job where you can cry all day and have an amazing day. You know, like you're like, that was so great, you know, after you were crying all day long, right? So yeah, yeah, I would say
It's
that.
sort of, yeah, it's sort of like a lot of actors. They just they film a movie, and I heard that there are some movies that are still in the can. It's a movie that's 20 years old, 22 years, hasn't actually been released yet,
Yeah,
um,
that happens a lot. I've
and
definitely had that happen with a lot of
and you
films.
know when
Yeah,
you're in a movie, it's probably going to take a year for, like, especially the new films being
definitely.
made for
Minimum a year.
Christmas, won't be
Yeah,
out till next Christmas.
exactly.
So it's like,
Always. Yeah.
you would not believe this character I played in this Christmas film, but you have to wait a year to watch it. I'm like, really? To wait?
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
instantaneous, you know?
No, God, no, no.
Are there any roles or of genres you haven't explored yet but would like to?
Well, there are 1,000 roles I would love to explore, but the genres, I would like to do more dramedy, I think. Like
Really?
more yeah, I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah, like White Lotus, The Morning Show,
Oh yeah.
Sex Education, like those kind of shows. I love that stuff. And I love that kind of heightened reality that's, you know, real and yet just slightly heightened. Um, and I like the humor. I like the comedy. I love comedy. So I really love comedy. And I have a serious face, so I don't often get that, but I love comedy. So I would love to do more of that.
Wow. Is there any a particular big celebrity or that you would like to work with that you ever thought that I want to be in the film with them?
I mean, sure. But, you know, there's nobody I wouldn't want to work with, honestly. It's not like I'm, you know, I don't have like one person, like that's the one I want to work with.
Hmm.
Olivia Colman's pretty amazing.
Oh
I
wow.
really
Yeah.
like her. Yeah. Um, if I were in a film with her, I would be like, yes, I made it. I'm good enough, right? Because that's the thing you know, we all deal with, am I good enough? Um, but yeah, she's pretty amazing. But there are so many good actors. There really are.
I admire the actors and actresses from the Crown. I mean, I think it's actually, you imagine doing a period piece,
I could totally imagine it. I would love it.
and then you're in like the 17th century, and then your cell phone rings. Oh, excuse me, it's kind of awkward. But if you watch
What?
Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston, you'll notice
Yeah.
he's wearing the Rolex watch on
Is
his
he
hip.
really? Oh
Yeah,
God.
so
Okay.
there's a lot of the same.
Continuity. Where was continuity with that? That's too funny.
What sort of advice would you give to up and coming actors?
just do it. Don't let fear stand in your way. Our lizard brain wants us to stay in our comfort zones, and your big dreams are not waiting for you inside of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
So you got to just take those first few steps and make yourself take those steps every single day, even if they're just baby steps. But keep moving forward every day, because once you get on the road, you are going to find other people who will lead you to the next destination. But you've got to do it. So I always say, when I was a young woman, I often let fear stand in front of me, and fear shows up sounding a lot like logic. So you have to just say, you are welcome to walk beside me, but you will not be standing in front of me.
Wow. Well, thank you, Anne, for sharing your insights and experience with us today. It's been a pleasure getting to know more about your journey and incredible work you've done. So we're going to end this stream, everyone. Thank you, Anne. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was so
You're
much
welcome.
fun.
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. Bye.